So you can see the political party in opposition is raising concerns. There's a defense from the ruling NPP officials on the ground. And then the police seem to be in the middle. They don't want to become confrontational or to be very much decisive. Now, let's get on the stream. Speak to Col Festus Aboagye, retired. Now, you have monitored the registration since it started. These clashes, the seemingly unending tensions that you observe, what are your own concerns over them first?
Well, thanks once again. I think we playing with fire as a nation. You see, Ayawaso West Wogon is not too far away in the recent history. There are a couple of lessons that we should have learned. One of these questions is, what do we consider to be a ballot center or a registration center? Is it only the small area that is marked with tapes, where you have the officials and the registration equipment and logistics? Or does a ballot center or registration center include the whole queue that people have joined from their homes in order to come and exercise their franchise? See, the argument of the EC that, and I want to believe that that is the mentality of the police, that when they deploy their men and women, they are only responsible for that small enclosure. And anybody else who left their houses with the sole purpose of coming to register, if the queue is 300 meters, 400 meters, 500 meters, because they have not reached that enclosure, they are not part of the ballot center. Now, that definition needs to be revised. The only reason why we leave our houses to go to register is to go and register. And our presence starts when we join the queue. The moment we join the queue, it is a responsibility of the EC with the electoral security management team to ensure that all of us are safe. The other picture I get from what the police officer said is that his men arrived. Now, if he had the men on standby at the station, why were these men not deployed in force to the respective centers under his control? We need to, yes, we must maintain reserves. That is a principle of operations. But there is no point in keeping the bulk of your men away from the center. And then in the event of confusion, you then rush them to the place. Probably the most worrying observation is that the political vigilantes are well and alive. The Act 999, which said by that act they had been disbanded, it's only in name or in word. In practice, we did not disband them. We proscribed them. We outlawed them. We should have gone through certain mechanisms, steps, concrete steps, to ensure that those groups listed in the Act, 27 of them, were physically dismantled, together with their command and control networks, the infrastructure, the weapons and equipment accounted for and handed over to the state, and then some other rehabilitation measures to ensure that those men and women who are members of these groups are found some economic livelihoods. We didn't do any of these. And we thought that by merely passing an act, we had disbanded vigilante groups. The few incidents that we've had show that vigilante groups are still around. And if we don't take steps now to make sure that we address the threat that they pose, I think come 7th December, there might be a bigger worry for the nation.
Reverend Dr. Paul Boafo, you remain in the middle. You do the interfacing, even across the dialogues that you undertake. You're meeting feuding factions. Is it that we're not calling a spade a spade?
Thank you very much, Roland, and thank you for this invitation. I think that we have to come in very hard on some of these issues that are cropping up, because we are calling for peace everywhere. People who are going to register, people who are moving from their houses to go and register, they go with the mindset that this is a peaceful exercise. So to come around and then to call for all these rows and all these fightings, I don't think that it is right. And we have to point it out to the political parties that whoever is instigating, whoever is coming around and telling them to go and meet people and fight them or do whatever, it's not right. And we should tell them in the face that it is not good for us as a nation. And if we are mediating, if we are in the middle, we should tell whoever is at fault that this is not good and we should stop it.
Col Aboagye, if you go to the clause 7 of the Act, it's indicated it is an offense for a person to form, organize, or promote the organization of a vigilante group, subscribe as a member of a vigilante group, or act as a member of a group. We had the NDC signing to a pact and saying that after this act, we're deciding among ourselves, especially with the NDC, with the NPP, that we're not forming groupings. And so we're not having individuals attired or in apparel that they could be named subsequently too. But based on your own experiences, how do you think they are perpetrating the actions we're seeing currently?
Well, that's the point that I made, that if I want to choose my words very carefully, the political parties, and in this respect, the two main parties, are not being honest with the nation as a whole. There is empirical evidence that they don't have faith in the very processes that they embarked on under the guidance of the National Peace Council. Indeed, that is why they had reservations even about the act, which was hurriedly taken through Parliament. When we sit back now and we look at the act and we compare the content of the act with the memo that circulated before the act was passed, we see clearly that the act was watered down. In the memo, I think clause 2 required the leadership of the 27 vigilante groups that are listed in the act to write to the minister. And the minister is described or explained, defined in the act and the memo as the Minister of Justice, informing the Minister of Justice that indeed, pursuant to the provisions and the spirit of the memo in the act, they have gone ahead to disband their groups, submit the names of their members, their leadership, and their equipment. Now, that was not done. In fact, that has not been done as we speak. Secondly, the Minister of Justice in the memo, 3 months after, that was in August, when the act was signed, August, September, October, November, thereabout, the Minister of Justice should have written to the vigilante groups and their leadership, asking them to account for their membership and their infrastructure. That has not been done. Now, who is to exercise this jurisdiction? It is the government, it's the state. So the state actors themselves have failed the state. They have failed the nation. They cannot hold the political parties to ransom because the state itself has become complicit, in these vigilante activities. Now, come to the MPC. I agree with what Reverend Dr. Boafo said. See, the NPC as a mediator has a dilemma. The dilemma being that they need to carefully balance their actions so that they are not perceived by any of the parties as taking sides. So if they're not very careful, they might lose the respect, the confidence, and the cooperation that they require from these parties. But having said that, we cannot, and the NPC should not, always keep quiet and give broad brush statements calling on political parties to comply with their code of conduct. No, it cannot continue forever. And indeed, the NPC itself needs to set its own timelines by which, before 7 December, they want to name names and tell the nation which political party, which leaders, which groups conducted which activities in violation of the Act. We need to get serious. Because I've said elsewhere that when we look at all the episodes that have unfolded and are unfolding before our eyes, I can see Liberia happening. I mean, I see Liberia playing out in the current situation in Ghana. All these busing of people and so on, they all amount to electoral rigging, you see. And elections rigging was part of the problem that Master Sergeant Doe had, to the extent that he even falsified his age. So we need to be a bit more careful than what we are doing now. We need to go back and take steps to, indeed, somebody asked me that the parties have disowned these groups. So if the parties have disowned these groups, where did the state get the names, the 27 names from? Did they just dream about these names? The state had intelligence suggesting that these groups existed. And that is why the state went to the extent, through its legislature, to name them and to say that they had been disbanded. But disbandment, I know in practice, as a former peacekeeper, is not an event, it's a process. That process ended with the signing of the Act and has left all the weapons and the financing and everything still in the hands of the groups, who are only underground, waiting for the appropriate time. And all those episodes that we are seeing are evidence that indeed, if need be, the political parties have the work and the commitment to deploy vigilante groups.
Reverend Dr. Boafo, there's one thing that we can observe. The NDC has been in power before. Indeed, they have this long-standing history in the Fourth Republic. The NPP too has this history, and they are also in power. The truth is, when you do the observation, the party in power has all thumbs up or all thumbs on the security apparatus. It has made the security forces inactive. Is not the truth? That, well, because the party is in power, I'm afraid, because there's an impending election, the party that I'm protecting is also going to have its opponents coming to power the next time around. Isn't not the reason why the security forces are inactive?
Well, in effect, that might be true, because they have to follow and go by the standards of the ruling party and what they are expected to do in all these activities. And sometimes it cripples them. It puts them in a very tight situation where coming outright and pointing the wrongs within the parties becomes very difficult. Just as the mediators, as my good friend said, we should play our role such that you are not tagged as supporting or condoning and conniving with whoever is in power. And the opposition should also be seen to trust you that this is what is right that you have to do. But sometimes it puts them in a very tight situation where we all see that, well, they should have pointed out, they should have mentioned names, they should have gone straight forward to say that this is the thing. They wait until people out in opposition come out to demand justice before some of these things are mentioned, which is not the right thing to do. If we want to be fair, then we should go straight and point out the wrongs. In fact, if we are pointing out wrongs, we should not be afraid to point it out, because wrong is wrong. We cannot just gloss over them. These are the things that we need to be doing, and that is what will make them independent, and then they could be fair to all parties who are engaged in these things. In any way, we don't want these things to happen at all. So how do we address it? Please let us go the right way. Tell whoever is wrong, whether in power or in opposition, let us be straightforward and tell them, so that we can move on as a nation in peace.
Colonel Aboagye, this is impossible. It's because of the way the appointments are made and how they pay obeisance and loyalty to those who make them kin in their positions in the security structure. Is that not the ideal observation?
Probably to some extent. But if I take the armed forces that I'm very conversant with, obviously, the CDS, Lieutenant General Obedakwa, is not the one who will come down to the ballot station. So even if the CDS has been appointed by this government, even if the service chiefs, particularly the army commander, has been appointed by this government, even if the battalion commanders and the command commanders have all been appointed by the government, it is not these leaders, senior officers, who get to the ground. It is the men and the women in uniform, the private soldiers, the lance corporals, the corporals, the sergeants, lieutenant, captain, let's say. So, if I understand your question well, we need to be a bit concerned, as indeed the debate has suggested, that the manner in which political parties now influence recruitment into the security services must be a source of concern to all of us.
Where do we start?
So, well, it's up to the state, the nation as a whole. Indeed, it's going to be extremely difficult, because by the year, the influence of political parties on recruitment in the security service, and I can speak about the armed forces, is getting worse. You see, so if men and women or political parties pack their boys and their girls into the security services, then of course, in a time like this, those boys and those girls who have been put in the uniform in these services may not call the party that helped them to get recruited to order. They will not deal with those perpetrators. In other words, by that action of political parties influencing recruitment, we are condoning impunity, because we have a certain backing of the perpetrators to the extent that the security services don't take action. And some analysts have suggested that there are cases where if you take strong action against somebody who is perceived to be inclined, aligned, affiliated with a ruling government, you'll be posted to the remotest part of this country as punishment. Indeed, your career might be jeopardized unless you are lucky that that government remains in power and is able now, if you like, to see through your appointment. So it's a wider debate that political parties must have the sense that without the state, they cannot act. So it is in their interest, as Reverend Boafo is suggesting, to first of all have peace and stability in the country so that they can continue to exercise their constitutional mandate. But to the extent that these stakeholders have themselves become, through their actions, through their activities, through their utterances in the media, undermining the integrity of the state, it beats the imaginations of all of us. We don't really understand why. But the answer is very simple. It's just because of the inclination, the desire to have access to political power. Because that power then gives you the capacity and the authority to distribute resources, you see. But is that what a state must be, and is that how a state must be run? Obviously not.
Yeah. At the heart of all this is to appease and also call everybody together. Reverend Dr. Aboagye, yes. your friends, all of you within the religious fraternity, you make up the National Peace Council, as well as other representatives as well. We have a number of them making up the Peace Council, the Catholic bishops, we have the Christian Council, the Ghana Pentecostal Council, and all these people who represent both the parties that have occupied the presidency or the executive arm of governance in the Fourth Republic. They go to your churches, they go to your mosques. You never call them to order. You just play the lip service.
Like that. Thank you. We do call them to order. We do call them to order. For that one, I must say that we do, in the sense that in the preaching, in the pastoral letters that come from all these religious bodies, and even as you read from the Christian Council, the Catholic Bishops' Conference, and all other religious bodies, that is what we have been preaching. We preach peace. We tell them that this is the way we all have to go, and it's peaceful. We want a free, fair, credible elections, and that is what has been hammered on again and again and again. When they come to church, you know that the church is made up of all these political parties. And so in standing and preaching, you give them that this is what we all looking forward to. You are seeking for power, political power, to rule the people. This is the way God will want it to be. And that is how we all have to do, and we all have to walk and go. So we have been very, very apt in saying that, look, this is the way, this is the way, this is the way. And that is what we call on all political parties, whether they are NDC, NPP, NDP, or whoever. Every political party has a root somewhere in a religious body. So we call on these people that this is the way. Whether they come to see you privately or you go to see them or they come to you, you are preaching to them in a general place. And it is not only to the political leaders, it is to the generality of Ghanaians, because they are the same people who are coming into the church, who are coming to form these religious bodies. So all that we say, in fact, from the beginning of this year, that was what the religious bodies started preaching until COVID came, and then we relaxed a little bit. But it is coming up again. And all the monitoring that we are doing, we are calling for peace. We are calling on the people. Sometimes we do things going to them individually, talking to them, and making sure that we all toe the peaceful line. As men and women of faith, that is what we have been praying for. And we pray that things like Liberia and Rwanda will not happen to Ghanaians. We pray for peace. And we appeal to these people that let us have peace. Because if the people live in peace, then you can also rule and rule well. If there is chaos, there is no way you can have your peace to be ruled. So why do we foment and call for war, rumors of war, where people live in fear, where people cannot come out? Then your rule cannot even be successful. So for us, we preach to them, we hammer, and then we tell them that this is the way we have to go. Peace, 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 and that is it.
Yeah, peace is good. You have been a peacekeeper before, so you know that preaching it is important, but it's the actions we have not taken. What actions should we be taking? Because yesterday when I spoke to you, I said I wanted to have this interaction. You said, look, how many years and times are we going to have this conversation?
Well, I think in the statement that the National Peace Council put out a few days ago, They acknowledged the contribution of the security services, i.e. the police, in some instances, taking proactive measures to diffuse, de-escalate tension. That is the right thing to go. So, in general, the politicians are at home, they are in their offices. The security personnel who have been deployed to ensure safety, law and order around these centers must do their work professionally, without fear, without favor. And if indeed they're going to be punished for that, that is fine. They would have gone down on the record that at least they maintain professionalism. If the security services do not act professionally, with authority, with forcefulness and forthrightness, they are letting down the entire nation. But let us come back to the political parties. They need to show responsibility and act responsibly, because they are major stakeholders in the welfare and well-being of the entire nation. So the leadership of these political parties cannot, give the impression that they are not the full soldiers, and therefore they have hardly any responsibility to play. They must call their boys and women to order. And indeed, the actions of some, I suggested somewhere that if the NPC and religious bodies and traditional leaders and political party members at the tactical level, at the level of the centers, can come together and form small groups, then they can, build confidence and be able to also diffuse, some of these things. Lastly, let me add that I mentioned impunity. If throughout our history, during the Fourth Republic, there have been myriad, umpteen times that political vigilantism has read its head, and we cannot count on our fingers 5 persons who have been dealt with according to the law, then of course we are condoning impunity. Because the idea is that it doesn't matter what you do, there will be a big man who will come and take you out of the due process. So maintaining rule of law, ensuring rule of law is also part of the equation. The preachers can preach. And the only reason why they preach, the reason why people go to church every Sunday and the mosque every Friday, is to be reminded of what it is that they have to do. But we know that, humanly speaking, we will not do the right thing. So when we don't do the right thing, what happens? Is it the preaching that must continue, or the state must now exercise its primary responsibility to ensure that people are dealt with in accordance with the law? If we're not going to do that, let's scrap this Act 999. Because hitherto, the Act is only on paper. It is not working in practice. And it's not working for the number of reasons that Reverend Boafo and myself have tried to suggest. There could be many, many, many other more reasons.
The Coalition of Domestic Election Observers, in their recent report on the phases of the exercise that has started so far, entreated the Ghana Police Service to ensure that they swiftly prosecute any persons who violate electoral laws to serve as deterrent. And they observed in the following. Yesterday, when I was going through their report, it's quite significant, even according to what we've also done. In the afternoon of July 4, 2020, there was a confrontation at a registration center at Sakasaka Police Station in Tamale, where a political party activist is said to have brought people outside. Again, busing being a key thing. When you move on, there was observation that a number of instances where political party executives and leaders kept trooping in and out of centers were worrying. Now, they said in one instance on June 30, at a registration center at Elubo in the Jomoro constituency, it resulted in a physical fight. They move on. When you go to Akachi North, in EPJHS Janlele registration center, you get to find that a registered voter and a party agent got also into a physical confrontation and a fight. And the challenge was over the collection of his or her voter ID card. and whether he was from the area or not. Now, just here, I'm a Saman. I'm sure it's close to you, Col Aboagye. A registration center at the District Magistrate Court in Pokwase. A suspected foreigner was arrested by security officers for attempting to register. And during the interrogation, well, either of the two parties had their agents in a scuffle or fighting. Your last words. What do you make of these? As we give some caution to the parties. Let me start with you, Osofo. You have not been telling, you've only been preaching Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, we preach Jesus Christ because he is peace. He is the source of peace. He is the source of tranquility for the individual and for communities and for the world. And that is why we preach him, so that we can all live as he lived. But I also want to add that the adherence to the law of the state is also paramount, because for all that we are saying, we have enough rules, we have enough laws enacted in the country that can deal with it. We don't have to go and bring new laws to guide us, because for whatever offense is committed, there is a law that can deal with it. So if we would only go by the rules, we will go by what we have said. These are the principles by which people can live in peace, by which people can go out and come in, live comfortably in a nation. Let those who are enforcing the law enforce it to the letter. If these things are done, we would all have our peace. Because if people are fighting, if people are passing people to registration centers and they are from outside the district, why do we look on and not arrest whoever is doing it? And those who are even arrested, well, we have to be swift in all these things. And just as Colonel said, if we have prosecuted 1, 2, 3 people, it will scare people to also continue to do it.
Well, the police are afraid.
I will also say that let us have this Act 999. Let us do the education properly, because sometimes it is up there. Down there at the grassroots, look at all these places who are fighting. You don't see people who understand even the law coming into it.
Okay.
They are the people who think that, oh, we are still in the old dispensation where vigilantes work. Vigilantes can operate and operate with impunity. Let us do the education properly and let them understand that, look, if you go against the law by this, if you are still in the vigilante, then you will be arrested and prosecuted.
Okay.
And then you will be sent to jail if you are found guilty.
Okay.
1 or 2 people, then these things will stop. These are my words, and I pray that we will continue in peace. For that one, we will preach it as faith-based organizations or the religious bodies, and let the security people also do their work. And we know that we can have a peaceful, credible, fair elections.
Colonel Aboagye, your last words.
Well, let me associate myself with what Reverend Boafo has said, but my last comments will relate to the responsibility of the EC to ensure that this process is successful, strictly in accordance with the letter and the spirit of our electoral laws. Now, unless the EC takes that responsibility, it's not going to succeed. So even the security issues that we are raising fall at the doorstep of the EC. Because the EC, with my limited understanding of the security architecture around elections management, is the head of all of these bodies. I would wish to suggest, like Odeo has said, that the EC gives periodic reports, briefings, updating the entire nation on how the process has been going, what problems it has identified, and what measures it is putting in place to address those issues, especially the infractions. There's one example, I stand to be corrected, but in the media, there was a report about very huge discrepancies in the numbers registered as accounted for by a political party and the EC's own numbers. So you're talking of 7,000 now becoming 20-something thousand. You see, and I don't understand how the EC can say that this was an error. Even if you play around with the numbers, 7,000, you don't get from 7,000 plus to 24,000 or thereabout, or from 5,000 to 14,000. Some of these episodes now get people to think that there is an agenda that is being set. You see, and it is the responsibility of the EC to ensure that the truth comes out. Who falsified the numbers? And those people, if any, responsible for that must be dealt with. Now, lastly, let's remind ourselves that all of this is taking place in the age of COVID. And you would have expected that if nothing at all, the threat of the COVID would have put some fear in us. Now, all the infractions that we've seen, the altercations, the fiscals, and so on, are all enhancing the spread of the COVID. But at the end of the day, the state that allowed the process to go on must be the same actor that ensures that there is compliance with the protocols. In that respect, I don't think the state is doing very well, although not every registration center, has found itself in such circumstances. We should try and prevent a situation where after the process ends in early August, we then get a huge spike in the COVID cases. That is not what I think Ghanaians are looking for. That we sacrifice our lives just to go and register and not even be able to go and vote.
Okay.
And even if, I think these are the few remarks that I would wish to make at this point.
Thank you very much. Col Festus Aboagye retired, helping us do this interesting and educative discussion. And then the Most Reverend Dr. Paul Kwabena Boafo. Well, thank you also. Two of you have been immense this morning, and I hope that you all did enjoy it. And well, next we have a conversation with Kwabena. Kwabena knows no holds barred at all. So we're opening him up. Mama Viosa Aboagye is having that interaction. We know that he has been immense in Ghana's musical industry, especially contemporary high life. All that is up next. Stay with us.